Okay, hopefully you've watched the video where I drafted this piece before you and then in the end spun it. So what I'm going to do is spin it back, and then we're going to go through how one could do it more quickly, but in a way that you don't want to start on when it comes to drafting. You want to start by using the concepts of offset, unless of course you're talking about something that's a path, and that's what we'll talk about in a little bit. So I've selected. Remember, I can always grab at any point on here. I'm going to left click again and then take my hand off the mouse, space, rotate. Last time I rotated 15 positive, I'm going to say minus 15, which is an hour's time going backwards, because the world, at least the sky, rotates in a counterclockwise direction, and we have before us what was the NP. So I'm going to go ahead, so I don't end up with a lot of these things, I'm going to go ahead and get in the habit of going File, Close, and then sure, Save Yes, and then File, New, grab from my short list decimal feet, open, and once again I'm going to take you through the same first process and then go much quicker with the rest. Once again, go to Model. Once again, go to File, Save As immediately. I'll give this as problem 1, 2, 1 underscore 2 underscore B, as I'm trying to keep track of these, remembering to save to an 04 out of habit. And then now going and remembering that in that last drawing there seemed to be an issue with the layers, so I'm opening up the layers toolbar, clicking on the object layer, at least in my case, and realize, oh, I already had a box there, which you'll see later is something called a feed box. But I'm going to go ahead, right click, erase, and again this time show you that we can use tools like this, like ortho, or particularly polar, which is a little bit more interesting, to do things like this. Draft a box, right, or draft lines. So I'm going to draft lines. Once again, it's a great idea to go 0, 0, 0. If I can see it now, if I get my mouse anywhere close to where I want it, like at 0 degrees, I can then type in, and I'll just type 20 and hit a return. If I've zoomed out far enough, I will see it. If I'm not, I won't. That's why, in fact, it's better to use the typing at, the scripting, just in case you are zoomed out and you can't see what you want to do here. But you notice now I just give it a nudge in the right direction, type 20, and again, just move my mouse, take my hand off the mouse is a key for many, 20, and you see it's giving you directions. Notice this is not with the dynamic on, this is just with polar snap set on, and I type 20, and I've done hopefully everything correct. You see the layer I had on was center line, so I learned to grab across. I don't have to right click properties all the time, best single thing to do, but I can go here and change that to the view layer. The habit of doing -V for view is something that I'm going to highly encourage. W for window. I talked about calling it home. From the end, you see I typed N there. At that point, I didn't need to do shift right click, though I'm going to point out I'm still drafting without my object snaps on, and now I'm ready to go. Still a good idea probably to do an offset and an offset, but not completely necessary. You now can do that problem 1-2 by having the polar snaps on pretty easily by just saying line. First point, well, let's say 2, 2, 0. Remembering in the short term, you won't need to do that for too long. Realize that these are all 3D coordinates and we're just drafting in the flat plane. I get my mouse close to horizontal and you see it lock on, and I can type in now 0.75. And I can live with the fact that I'm on the wrong layer, but at this point I might go ahead and end my command. But you don't need to necessarily always be on the right layer. You just want to convert it when you're back. And if you notice here, this polar is grabbing at different, it won't just grab 90 degrees. So you want to zoom in close enough, and you can set it so it only grabs 90, but that's kind of what ortho's for. So we could do this one with ortho on, but it's better off to get used to using the polar. I get it close and I type in once again 0.75. Move my mouse kind of in the right direction, take my hand off the mouse, and I am looking at now, mathematically, 7.25 minus 1.5, so that is 5.75. Get my mouse kind of close, going down 0.75. And yes, in fact, notice there that because of the way I went it, I was locked in at 15 degrees. So you can always use U for undo or Control Z. It's probably a better one to learn because it's consistent in most of Windows. So I'm going to take my hand off the mouse and try it again, 0.75. Just giving it a nudge, 1.5. And then giving it a nudge is what I'm going to call that, just getting it so it locks on, 4.5. And if you notice now, amongst the things I'm doing is I'm giving this thing a positive or counterclockwise direction. I'm going to go down here, 0.5, getting it relatively close here, and I'm going 0.75. Taking my hand off the mouse, and that didn't take. So I'm using visual clues because often enough, 0.75, you'll kind of hit the wrong key. Take my hand off the mouse. I'm going down at this point. Now I've got to start using some math. It's 4.5 minus 0.5, so it's 0.75. And again, if you notice there, I'm going to show you that because I was touching it or I did something wrong on the mouse, I get this type of thing. So I'm going to right now hit escape and finish my command. Then learn to go in, left click, right click, erase or delete, and begin from where you broke, hopefully by just using the end. But at this point, you realize that you might want to go to Shift, right click, Object Snap Settings, and look at the polar tracking. So you might want to just set the polar tracking at this point to 90 degrees, which is the same as ortho basically, but realize that you can set these things up with the object snap settings even without having a lot of the other stuff on. So right now all we have is the polar snap. So once again, L for line, Shift right click once you have something on the page. The most correct thing is to actually use the Shift right click. It is not to type in the coordinates. Even if you wanted to go back to 0, 0, that's not the thing to do. So we're going to go down now, thinking about it, 3.25, we wanted to go down 0.75, and now there's little chance of us, because we have the lock on the way it is, if we have our hand off the mouse, this is 1. Moving my hand down here now, that once again was somewhere in the order of 4.5 minus 1.75, so that's 3.5, 3.25. Calculator's good, but what I want to point out is using visual clues to see when you did something wrong, like that. So remember Control Z for undo. I'm coming down, in this case I want to come down from where I am, 1.75. Kind of thinking about your math here, you can even start using visual clues. I'm guessing it's about 1 from that line going across. So on the odd occasion, you could just do this now. Drag that line down, hit an escape, O for offset, 1, because it's a thickness of 1 along here, F for fillet, select, select, and you're back to that point that there's no one method. So at this point, I can now have to establish where I'm at again, so I can offset 2. And I could then do fillet, select, and I might then, if I wanted to continue with what I was doing before, erase that and say L for line, shift right click, endpoint. Remember, I still have my ortho on, and now I'm coming up 0.75, return or spacebar, moving to the left, 1.5, moving up, 1.5, moving over 0.75, and then moving up one more time, 0.5. Sliding back here now, and this is where you can see all kinds of different ways to do it, but sliding back here, any great distance you might want, you might go beyond. And you might then go from a line from the endpoint here, either go shift right click perpendicular, which would be a good thing to do, and then still going back F for fillet, click, click, and having the shape. I will point out in doing that, I didn't necessarily keep all of these things going in the right direction because I skipped methods. So in fact, if what I had laid out here was a go-kart track where I wanted the things to go there and then take a left and then take a right and then right, left, or a path for some reason, there are some of these lines that do not go in the right direction. So I will have caused a problem with the directionality to it. So you want to realize that these methods are mixable. This is more efficient for some things, but for sure, even my eye picks out that there's a chance that this line here might not be perpendicular. So we learn then to use our visual clues, type LI for list, click on that there, and if you notice, I'll do it again, LI for list, click on that there. It actually is showing with a lot of zeros behind it because the format was set. Units is what you type, units. You want to make sure that you have a good precision there. So it looks like it's okay. Escape, 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 Z space, E space, takes you to there. Or in fact, if you had gotten very lost, I'm holding the shift key, remember wheeling in and out. You also could do V for view, and then click on home, set current, okay, and it would jump back to where I am. Let's not forget to start using these tools by grabbing, changing the layer to object, and then perhaps hitting escape, escape, escape to unselect, going immediately to dimension, and trying again what we had done before. Not grabbing the first one, but grabbing the aligned from shift right click, the endpoint there, shift right click, the endpoint there, pulling it down, clicking, and then doing another dimension as well. But remembering, if it's a full dimension, we don't need to grab the endpoints. That can be problematic. Grab the object, pull it out, and hopefully you get to see that you've done things the same way. Later we will see you can add line types that have text in them or symbols, so it will show in what direction the lines went. This may seem small, to many it does, but understanding that lines on the page actually, or in the drafting plane or in the design plane, have direction is a habit that if you establish the thought early, you'll be much better off. So that was using polar snaps to do the same, once again without dynamic. I will try the dynamic, but remember that we also could have done this. We could have just typed in more or less line from a certain point and then at distance less than symbol and then a direction, and our directions would have been 0, in this case 90, 0, 270, 0, 90, 180, 270, 180, 270, 180, 270, 180, and let's look if that worked. When I list it, that direction, you remember, that was the one that I drafted by offset. Whereas the rest of these, if I list them, 90, this one, LI for list, you see it's at a 180. So this concept of directionality is included in the data. It is in most programs. And later on, as you're trying to do computations on maybe electrical work with lines, realize that lines have directionality. All right, that's the second problem 1-2. 1-3 I will do all with offsets and then relative coordinates by typing. And these skills, playing around with them and flipping them in and out, will help, especially if you establish very strongly how much you can do by scripting. And you don't necessarily have to run a script file to do scripting. We'll call it, if I say line and then at distance less than and then in an angle, that is scripting as well. You do not have to do scripting in a script file. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope you make some progress in these drawings, and I hope you brought your headphones. Thanks for listening.